Thanks for joining us for WNY News Now, continuing election coverage. Today, we're speaking with Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, who currently represents New York's 22nd congressional district, but due to redistricting, is now running for the new NY-23 seat. Congresswoman, thank you very much for your time this afternoon and connecting with us.
Thank you. It's great to be on, and good luck to you
Thank you. I
as a
want to.
young entrepreneur here.
Oh, I really appreciate that. And I want to first give you a chance to kind of talk with maybe a new populace that you're trying to branch out to here in Western and parts of the southern tier of New York State. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're running for NY-23?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm a lawyer by trade. I was a partner in my law firm, and I was also ran our family business, which you and I had a nice time discussing, which is a newspaper and also a printing company founded, and it was all founded in Shenango County. And my cousins and my relatives still live there. I'm the only one that lives up in Utica area. And my brother and my nieces and my nephews and all that, my extended family are all from that area, which, by the way, I was in the district, including my cousin's farm. And my other relatives have a farm as well. So it's kind of exciting to have the opportunity to be able to represent Western New York. So I really never thought I'd be in politics. I ended up becoming a single mother, and I ended up caring for my son and my parents who lived across the street. My son, I'm really just proud of how he turned out. He's a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He served active duty in the Marine Corps for 8 years and just got out of active duty and has joined a reserve unit and is working in the private sector as well. And so he's doing great. And one thing that connects me a lot to Western New York, I was an original Bills fan long ago, back when O.J. Simpson was there and all the way through the Doug Flutie days. But that's when my son became this crazy Bills fan. So I used to take the train and go to the Bills Stadium for the games with him. We even went to a game in Rogers Stadium in Canada because it was so cold. You know, we dress up in our snowmobile suits and head to the games. But he's still a fan. In fact, his last 3 years in the Marine Corps, he chose the Erie, Pennsylvania Marine Corps station because it was proximity to the Bills, where he's a season ticket holder, and he still flew up for all the games this year and he was there when they beat the Patriots. So and I grew up riding horses, so I showed at the Buffalo Saddle and Bridle Club, which they've changed it now, and horse shows out that way. So I've spent quite a bit of time up and down the southern tier, and I was also a sales rep for our family business, and so I'd spent quite a bit of time in the southern tier. I actually decided to run for the state assembly after just being so frustrated with politicians in Albany and not actually helping the small business community, our farm community, and those people. So, I defeated the Republican county chairman, believe it or not, to win my seat in the state assembly. And they redistricted me into the longest district created in New York history at the time. And that ran all the way to Orange County, New York, where my constituents commuted to New York City. So I know what it's like to be redistricted by the Democrats into districts that people think are unfair. But I think there's a big distinction between an assembly or a Senate seat where you actually represent your community on the state level and a federal position where you actually represent your community on a national level. And so as I indicated, I vote on the same bills as someone in Florida, someone in California, and someone in the Midwest votes on as your national representative. But I bring a lot of experience to this job, obviously, as a journalist, as a partner in a law firm, as a business owner, currently running a business with my family roots in Shenango County. And so I also have experience as being a member of Congress in the 115th Congress. And I know what it's like to run tough elections. And I'm really devoted and committed to standing up for our community and being an advocate. And I've got a lot of great initiatives out there that I'm continuing from the 115th that didn't get passed, and many new things that we need to do in order to bring prosperity back to our communities. So I think that it's people certainly say, you don't actually live in the district now. Well, none of the Republican representatives who are currently running in upstate New York live in the districts. They were all gerrymandered out of their districts by the Democrats. It was intentional, it was calculated, and it was done to sow derision and divisiveness in the Republican Party, so that we would have tough primaries, or people would question whether you really represent communities or not. And I think I could ask the same question that many people ask, like, well, how can you represent Western New York? I'm like, well, how can somebody from Western New York represent my family in Shenango County? And it's because we are New Yorkers, and we are representing people on a national level. And the interests of our community are very similar to the interests across the state. And I think upstate and the southern tier are very different than, for example, the Hudson Valley. And so when you look at my assembly district, and I learned that my first assembly district, I represented central New York and 5 regions of New York all the way to the Hudson Valley. I will tell you, although we're all New Yorkers, on a local level, the issues are different in Hudson Valley. And I don't see any distinctions actually between the New York's 22 and New York's 23rd district as it's proposed, because all of the issues are basically the same, because we're not a really a New York City based type district. So I think that I'm in a great position to, to run for this seat. Obviously, in campaigning, I've worked really hard to get a lot of support. And some of that is translated into having, a good amount of money in the bank. But that's because I do a great job. It's because I work hard, and I try to get people to understand that I'm on a mission to save New York and save America. And that's what we've got to do. So I think that my experience, particularly as a small business owner, I'm a member of the small business community. I am now going to be the chair, or the ranker, which is the Republican chair of the subcommittee on agriculture for the Small Business Committee, which is really important to me and my family of farm and the farmers that I represent in my community. So those are among the many, I just think that right now we are in a real turning point in our state and in our nation, where we really need to bring our supply chains back. We've just come through a terrible pandemic. All the small businesses are struggling. And by the way, a lot of that PPP money went through the Small Business Committee. And so we're conducting oversight on fraud, abuse, and waste for that committee. But there's just a lot of things that I am well positioned right now, and well ahead of the game, and trying to bring changes that are actually going to make a difference for our community. And I think a lot of my experience helps me as a better advocate, and also just my experience. Obviously I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee too. I used to live in the former Yugoslavia. I'm co-chair on a number of different countries, caucuses, Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro, and other Ukrainian caucus and other caucuses in the East. And so that's put us in laser focus on what's happening with Russia, and the just murderous invasion of Ukraine, the threats and intimidation on Eastern European countries and others. And so my experience working at the former Yugoslav consulate, working on the Olympics in Sarajevo in 1984. I know you weren't even thought of back then, but I think I bring a lot of experience to this job, and I'm a very aggressive advocate. I'm going to put a lot of time and effort. I already have. Every chance I get, I'm in the district and making sure that I understand the needs of this new NY-23, which is a complete honor to represent. It's an amazing section of New York, and I think I can do a great job representing them.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I know I've talked with a lot of people about the redistricting process, looking at it from both sides. And obviously there's a legal battle ongoing now, but nevertheless, the June primary is approaching. So you have to campaign, you have to get out and voters. And one of the things that we're hearing from a lot of our viewers and readers is that they're almost tired of government in many ways. They've gone for decades not necessarily having a voice in Albany, not necessarily having a voice in DC, feeling outcast by the standards of being here in Western New York. I know Congressman Tom Reed, who has represented this district for a long time, he worked to try to get through some of the partisanship on that bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. For you, how will you be able to take that leadership role, being in a minority right now, which could change this fall, in Washington, to elevate some of these voices that have gone forgotten?
Yeah, I feel the same way as other people do. I feel I'm not represented in Albany. I'm not represented in Washington. We're in the minority in both as a business owner. The people that have presided over this region and our state have not brought any prosperity. It continues to get worse. We're dead last in business friendliness. We're highest taxed. We have the least free state. We have people leaving in record numbers, the highest outmigration of any other state in the nation. We have a governor that's authoritarian. She doesn't respect parents. She doesn't respect our care workers and especially hospital workers, people working in the power generation facilities that people have had vaccine mandates forced on them, or make the decision about losing their job. So I think I can give a real good distinction of what's going on. I served in the 115th Congress. The Republicans were in the majority in the House, also in the Senate, and also President Trump was in office. When I came in as a freshman, we signed a commitment to civility with the freshman class. Everyone signed it except 3 Democrats. At that time, the Democrats were very interested in working with us. And I find that, some of those people I forged great relationships with. And we did a lot of great bipartisan work, which I think is really important that we can do. And by signing that commitment to civility, we did a lot of social work. I still work, still friends with a lot of these people. But unfortunately, something happened in 2018. The far left people who advocate socialism, who advocate government control, not freedom, not self-governance, which is why people are sick of government. It's because they don't have a voice. Our country is founded on the principle of self-government. We should be leading the charge, not government officials. And the Democrats now in power are basically advocating socialism. When you have a country where the chairman of the budget committee that controls all of the money and the finances from one of the greatest economic powers in the world, and the leader is a self-proclaimed communist, Bernie Sanders, you have to question, he's about authoritarian government and control and less control of the people. So there is a big change that has happened. And I applaud Tom Reed for his attempts to try to bring people together. But where have we gotten on this? We lost the majority, and we are now in a position where we have the Democratic Socialists of America dominate the state assembly in terms of the largest caucus in the assembly. When I served in the state assembly and you said to a Democrat that you were a socialist, they would have completely rejected that and thought it was an insult. Today, it's a badge of honor. And I think that's a real difference between where we are today and where we were even when I ran and served in the 115th Congress just a few years ago. So I think we need to advocate, find common ground where we can, but we cannot surrender what is the United States: freedom, individual rights, prosperity, and allowing people the opportunity to self-govern, and allowing the people the opportunity to work without having mandates and vaccines. And I'm totally supportive of people who want to have a vaccine. I got the vaccine. There's people that couldn't have the vaccine. And I watch people who were removed and lost their jobs permanently. They can't get their jobs back because they don't have a vaccine. And for some of them, it would have been life-threatening. And some of them, it was against their religious beliefs. That's not what America was founded on. And so I think that we're in a different time. And I was part of making sure we bring people together. I don't think I need to join the Problem Solvers Caucus. Let me tell you something. They're really good at raising money. I'm not sure they solved any problems, although they tried hard. So nothing really changed in terms of that. But they raise a ton of money, and I give them credit for that. But in terms of advocating for what we are as American citizens, I want to lead the way. I want to see people like you, Justin, who is an entrepreneur running your business. Young people feel like they can come forward and embrace freedom, respect each other without having this terrible, woke culture and cancel culture, because I think it hurts us all. I never have seen this kind of animosity among people that I see now. Half my family are Democrats, and most of us still get along, and then some of us don't. But that shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't be politics that divide us. We should all be united on defending the United States and self-governance and freedom. We might have a different idea about how to get to the end result, but the end result is protecting our Constitution and our rights.
Yeah, and that's an impressive thing to see today, unfortunately, is the fact that Democrats and Republicans can get along. And in many cases, when you walk into a room and you meet someone new, one of the first things they ask you, especially following the 2016 election, is where do you stand? Did you vote for President Trump? Did you not? And it's only gotten worse, it seems like. How
Mhm.
do we come together? And as a Republican, I know in this district, there's a lot of people. I still see the signs out there. Make America great, and there are still pockets of people who believe that when you look at election integrity, the president should have won. But nevertheless, we are where we are today. How do we move on from that? And
Well,
should we?
we must continue. We have to fight. I mean, I had one of the closest elections. It took almost 100 days in court to decide my election because of the pandemic election, the irregularities created, the great burdens placed on the boards of elections, the online unverified database that Andrew Cuomo created that created this influx of unprecedented number of absentee ballots. The first time the boards ever dealt with a presidential election in early voting. We have all this dilution of control. You have the Department of Motor Vehicles registering voters and the Board of Elections having to try to, interagency cooperation. You had so much confusion and yet no new resources going to these boards of elections. And that was almost intentional chaos to make it hard for them. And what did Andrew Cuomo do? He blamed all the boards of election. And I have a race where I worked with 8 different counties. And a lot of these people were doing a great job. Not all, a lot of them were doing a very good job under really difficult conditions. Over 100 legal changes were made. Changes to the law, mostly by executive order, were made in the last few months before Election Day, making it really difficult for these boards to operate, which is why if you saw me on my national TV interviews and other local interviews, I wasn't going after the Board of Elections. I was blaming Governor Cuomo for not giving the resources to these people to be able to administer elections properly and with integrity. Because if we don't have integrity in our elections, we are never going to have free and fair elections. We're never going to have people trust the process. And that's why, under Article 2 of New York's Constitution, we actually have a pretty good constitution. We have a bipartisan election crew, election team, and most of them work really well together. They care about making sure there's one citizen, one vote. But now you see New York City undermining the right to vote by allowing non-citizens to vote. And that just dilutes the vote of the citizens who worked hard in many cases to become citizens. Some of us are there by birthright, but I know a lot of people who are so proud and so excited about naturalization and becoming an American citizen. Yesterday was a wonderful naturalization ceremony. We brought all these new citizens on board who are just thrilled to be part of a system that reveres freedom, rights, and cares about self-governance. And then think about these are great new citizens who don't want to see their vote diluted or undermined or taken advantage of. And unfortunately, in a lot of ways, that's what the Democrats are doing, being driven by the communist type people, the AOC types, the tail wagging the dog, and Nancy Pelosi, who's just all about power and control for herself. And a lot of these good Democrats get lost in the mix because dare they stand up, they get millions of dollars spent against them in a primary. And, a lot of my good friends are terrified of a primary, which is why they end up voting that way. And so, they've used social media as a weapon. They've used this misinformation as a weapon. So we have to start really and you're there, you're 24, you're in a position now where the truth really needs to be out there. I mean, let's look at this disgusting situation in Ukraine and the misinformation coming out every day. Do we know if it's the Russians? Is it some other malevolent group that's trying to, move people or move, sentiment in the wrong direction? And so it is a hard time, and it is a really hard time to be a young person and trying to understand what's right, which ends up. But that's where we have to get back to our core principles of freedom and rights. And it sounds, I don't mean to make it sound cliche, but it's just so important to who we are as a nation. And really respecting each other, respectfully disagreeing, I think is really important. And I think, sometimes people take cheap shots. And look, I'm not going to back down and give an inch when somebody treats me unfairly. But when a journalist is willing to give me a fair shot and they're willing to let me say my piece and they put the other side, that's what it's all about. It's the ability to look at both sides and make your own assessment and based on your own, your own ability to think critically, And so I feel like we do have hope, but we've got to like bring the temperature down and respect each other first. I think that's really where it all starts.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Ukraine, and I want to kind of turn to that for a moment. I know that's on the minds of so many people. And just this week, just last night, the Senate moved forward with a bill to keep the government running and also some big steps to help Ukraine in forms of aid. Where do you stand on that package? And also this war that we're seeing? You mentioned immigration a little bit with accepting citizens. I know Governor Hochul has said she's ready to accept Ukrainian refugees. How does the U.S. assist in this? And what do you think our role should be? I know a lot of people are afraid of World War III unfolding if
Mhm.
we do the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's a very tricky situation, which we created. We made ourselves energy dependent when we were energy independent. We shut down the Keystone pipeline. We shut down the ability to make ourselves and continue our energy independence with natural gas versus coal. And natural gas is much cleaner. You know, under President Trump, when he unleashed the natural gas industry to provide to fill in for a lot of the coal plants, our emissions actually went down. Our CO2 was much better under President Trump. In just 1 year of having President Biden shut down the Keystone pipeline, move reliable energy more towards coal, we have seen emissions go up. And the other problem we have is we have this high price of gas on top of inflation, which is continuing to grow. We created a weak situation. We projected weakness. The Afghanistan debacle, was really bad. And I think, villains and murderous dictators like Vladimir Putin, let's get this straight. This is a KGB agent whose job was probably killing a lot of people as a KGB agent, who, took advantage of Russia during the fall of the Soviet Union, is very wealthy and has control over all these oligarchs. But he's a strategic player. He knows that the U.S. is weak. They spent millions of dollars pushing us away from fossil fuels and into green energy, especially Europe and the Germans, by green lighting the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. We played right into Putin's hand, and he's using weapon as a strategic enemy, a weapon. He's using that. We're still tying our hands. The White House is still talking about today. Wait till we get electric cars, then we won't have to worry about fossil fuels and people like Putin using, fossil fuels as a weapon. And this naive view, I mean, where do they think that these electric cars plug into, plug into a battery, and that battery is, built in China, and the battery is funneled and run mostly by fossil fuels. So it's just this naivete about energy. We need energy literacy. We need economic literacy. And we need to open up our channels for that. And so, unfortunately, we did provide some assistance to Ukraine. We must let the Ukrainians fight their battle. I think it's really, unfortunately, we let this situation happen, which makes it even more heart-wrenching and more difficult to watch. As the Ukrainians, they're inspiring the world with their resiliency and their willingness to stand up for freedom. But do we want to fight a battle on European soil, which hasn't been done since World War II? Do we, go in there, and we have to be forcefully giving them the lethal aid that they need? But I'm very concerned about having American boots on the ground. And my son's an active duty Marine. He doesn't support that either right now, from what I know. I don't see anything from him, and he can't really give me suggestions. But that is a really tricky case but you cannot project weakness to Putin. You have to have deliberate lines in the sand, and those red lines, if they're violated, we have to take action. And so I'm concerned that Putin just sees that we are just weak and we're not standing up. And what is he going to do? He's going to empower people like Xi Jinping, an actual global superpower in China, to move into Taiwan, where 85% of our chips are made, which run our computers. They've already hacked 6 states. Chinese hackers it was revealed a few days ago. So they're already in the cyber realm. They're in the hypersonic technology ahead of us. They have defense strategy ahead of us. They just built a massive carrier. Their Navy is huge. Their weapon systems. They kill their own people. They don't care about genocide. And they are a communist authoritarian regime that doesn't care. And so they're going to be even more of a problem if we show weakness and allow Putin to win this. Our allies are helping us. We have to remember Ukraine is not a NATO country, but we can provide lethal aid to the Ukrainians without ourselves being on the ground. And we need to do that, forthright, or we're going to see even more slaughter every day on our TV, which is just absolutely heart-wrenching for American citizens to watch. I have never seen anything like this in my lifetime.
So
I've
you
seen a
think,
lot of terrible wars. The war in, Yugoslavia, when that fell, the war in Somalia and other places were horrible. But this is on a scale that I don't think people have ever seen since World War II.
so from your perspective then, should President Biden's administration do more in that sense of providing that military aid to Ukraine? Because I know at this point it's gone back and forth. Nations have wanted to, give them more Air Force supplies, for example, and
Well,
uh,
it's a complicated issue because, first of all, if you were to hand them planes and, those are not something that you can learn how to operate in a few days. Those are, our pilots are trained for years on how to operate these planes. We can train them on using Stinger missile, Stinger handheld missile. We can train them on those types of things quickly, and they're effective. They can take out Russian tanks. They're doing that. But we need to do that. We need to provide that technology to them, and we are. But we need to do more of it, and we need to make sure that they're emboldened. We also, as you say, describe the humanitarian situation where I think Poland is coming up on 2 million refugees coming across the border, and Poland needs assistance. Poland needs help caring for these people, providing food and clothing and medical care to these people, and a place for them to live while this is happening. And also, we need to try Vladimir Putin for war crimes. He needs to pay for this. But right now we are in an emergency situation. We've got to be helping our allies and our the neighboring states there who are right now really concerned about what's going to happen to them. There's a power vacuum right now. You could go right through Eastern Europe, all the way down. None of these countries have the resources that they need to defend against some kind of invasion from Putin. And Ukraine is a very large country. It's one of the largest land masses in Europe. They're the breadbasket of Europe and a lot of the Middle East. They have rich minerals and oil and gas. And so, that's part of the reason that Putin probably took them. But, to be honest, I was speaking with my colleague, Representative Victoria Sparks, who is a native Ukrainian. And Victoria Sparks actually was telling me she was in Ukraine right before Putin invaded, and she's been to Poland just recently and met in Brussels and met with the Europeans. A lot of what her feelings are, and her relatives are actually still in Ukraine. Her 95-year-old grandmother is in the basement of her apartment because they're bombing the apartment, and her cousins are there. She really believes that Ukrainians were turning very pro-America, and they like the United States, and they wanted to emerge out of the corruption, which has been the kind of the unfortunate situation with Ukraine. We have Joe Biden's own son involved with Burisma and Ukrainian oligarchs and Ukrainian, corrupt leadership. But, we want to see Ukraine strive to have, get rid of the corruption as much as they can. Every country's corrupt to some degree, but, being able to minimize it. And so she thinks a lot of it is Putin does not want a country that size with a pro-US type of population nearby. And so he's punishing the Ukrainians and making sure that that doesn't happen, among the many other reasons that we can speculate, and, world domination. But again, we're looking at a country, Putin and Russia is got an economy the size of the state of Texas. They're hardly a global power, but they project as a global power.
Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, running for NY-23. Thank you very much for joining us today. In our last couple moments here, I want to kind of continue that conversation in regards to the side effects of Ukraine, which we hinted at the top a little bit. Some of the things I think that are keeping people down in Western New York and across New York State and most of America out of this pandemic is some of these economic problems that we've been having, and we're seeing it now at the pumps, with inflation at the grocery store. I know there's been a big push in New York to try to get people to go back to work if they lost their job during the pandemic. For you, can you update us on what the pulse is in Albany, in DC, and where you are in the sense of trying to get some relief to people? I know gas prices has been really the big talk this week because it's gone up exponentially since Monday.
Yeah, this is a huge problem. I did a teletown hall where we had as many as 22,000 people on the call. the vast majority of the questions were on inflation and on the price of gasoline and the price of heating oil and natural gas, obviously. But people are very concerned, people that were seniors on fixed income who couldn't pay their bills. A lot of people who are paying this huge amount can't commute to work. You know, a lot, as you know, we don't have a lot of public transportation in most of the current district I represent in the NY-23 and as it will be in the future. And so this is a huge problem, and we have got to deal with this energy crisis. We have got to start becoming energy independent. We've got to bring down the price of gas. It is a commodity. It is not about, you know, rich oil and gas company executives trying to, you know, gouge the public. They spend an enormous investment in gas and oil exploration. And that investment, you can't just spend all that money and not have a return or have the unpredictability of government. And it's also a commodity. There are thousands competing in this industry to try to bring, you know, these services to the table, and not getting pipelines that are cleaner and more efficient and faster than doing the trucking aspect of it, which is what the Democrats never seem to understand, is a problem. Another thing that, you know, there's a proposal to reduce the state gas tax somewhat. I mean, that's a temporary relief, but a lot of that 20% or $20 worth of that gas tax actually goes to improving our roads and maintaining them. A lot of that gets shifted away in Albany because that's what Albany does. But unfortunately, that's just a temporary solution. But we have got to look at this as a long-term, all of the above energy strategy. You cannot just cut fossil fuels out and expect the people to survive this. It is absolutely hurting American citizens and people in upstate New York. This is devastating what's happening. We have among the highest gas tax in the nation, and we are getting some of the highest energy prices. I've proposed a bill, which I don't know how far we could get with it, certainly not in the minority, that would actually take and eliminate the tax on Social Security for seniors that are collecting, which we know they already pay a tax when they come in. Why should they pay a double tax? That would provide some relief, and I think that's something we should look at anyway. You know, but getting a strategy, a long-term strategy, is what we're going to need to do. But we need to unleash the potential that we have in gas exploration in the southern tier with the Utica and Marcellus Shale. Open up the ability to get these pipelines to bring down our emissions, so we're not dependent on coal and unreliable sources of energy. If we have a terrible storm, which we're going to have this weekend, if we didn't have reliable energy sources, you know, we could see shutdowns, power outages, brownouts, all kinds of terrible things happening. Reliable, clean energy is important, but natural gas and some fossil fuel usage is part of keeping that grid reliable. And so we can't just cut it off. So I'm hoping that we can get some energy literacy into the equation and bring some relief to people that way. But right now, some of these short-term fixes could help. But in the long term, we've really got to get ourselves out of this, you know, this wrong-headed thinking on energy.
Is there anything in the short term you see that could provide relief immediately? Because I know
Well,
a
I
lot of
mean,
people have an issue.
there's assembly members and senators that are proposing, you know, a gas tax holiday. I proposed, you know, eliminating the tax on Social Security, but bringing down the price and getting more gas online would bring down the price, for example, would definitely help. So, I mean, that would have an immediate effect. But, you know, you've got to now, the White House refuses to do that. They've been saying it yesterday, today, every day. They refuse to do that. They say we get more electric cars, which can be $57,000 to $60,000. You know, if you were, somebody put something really interesting online, and this is unverified, but there aren't enough electric cars out there right now because we have a supply chain crisis. So, I mean, we have got to like stop tying our hands behind our back and thinking that we can resolve this problem without dealing with the energy issue, because it is the main issue right now. And it's exactly why Putin, and I'm certain Xi Jinping, is plotting and planning already to go into Taiwan. There are already you know, outages in Taiwan, power outages, and they control a lot of the infrastructure in places like Taiwan, obviously, and, you know, in other countries, poorer countries around the world. And reliable energy is going to be the solution to the future right now. We've got to have it. And I'm all for, you know, adding green energy solutions to this, but you can't just completely go eliminate fossil fuels and think that you're going to somehow, you know, solve our world's problem and also keep us energy independent.
In our final moment here,
Yep.
and thank you very much for your time. What would be the one thing you would want voters here in NY-23 to take away when going to the polls in this June primary and possibly voting for you in the general election?
I think people that are don't know me. I consider myself a very compassionate advocate. I really care about our country and the people I represent. And I'm going to fight hard to learn everything I can about them and make sure that I'm meeting their needs in a responsible, common sense way. And I'm going to be very reliable to them. I'm not someone that's going to go off on the rails. I make common sense decisions, and I am very transparent. I explain every vote I make in Congress. We spend a lot of time thinking through bills and pouring through the language to make sure those bills are going to be constitutional and also good for my community. So I think they can rely on me for that. And I'm going to work really hard. I don't do, although I had a business, I unfortunately had to put it in a trust in order to do the job I'm in. But I understand the issues and I want to find real solutions. I'm not going to give them political talk. I'm going to be very honest about everything. And I've always fought against the status quo. I was the first one to call for Sheldon Silver to resign when everyone thought they were going to cut my brake lines. I'm the first one to call for Governor Cuomo to resign many times over some of his corrupt practices in the past. I'm going to call out elected leaders regardless of party and make sure that they're representing their constituents and make sure they understand that that's who comes first, the taxpayers of New York and the people who are in need. And, I live up to my constitutional principles and my oath. And I did in the state assembly. And what a lot of people don't understand is that we have people that are truly needy and we need to protect them. We have students that rely on us and their parents need to raise them. And we need to provide them with the resources they need in terms of having education and having common sense when it comes to their health needs. So there's a lot out there that I think that people just, I want to be the voice of reason for people and not, and not give them political answers or create political coalitions that don't mean something, but actually provide solutions.
Right. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, running for NY-23, current rep for New York's 22nd District. Thank you very much for your time today and joining us for our political spotlight.
Thank you so much, and good luck to you because you're our future. So I want to see you get the truth out there.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. Our team
Thank
works
you.
extremely hard on that. And of course, to continue to stay up to date with our election coverage, log on over to WNYNewsNow.com, our free mobile app. And of course, you can watch all of our content anytime on channel 716 on Roku.